Today, I'm thrilled to introduce our guest, Melissa James. She's a gifted singer-songwriter whose work captures raw emotions and deep connection. Her second album, Stripped Back, highlights her intimate, soulful voice alongside just a guitar or piano, creating space for her powerful stories to emerge. Let's dive into Melissa's incredible journey and discover how she brings love, music, and connection to life. Hello, B-Siders. Welcome to this brand new, fresh episode of my Living on a B-Side podcast. I'm very excited you're here with me and my guest today. Another amazing episode. I can feel it in my bones about music, its power, and the impact it can have in our lives. And without further ado, I'm going to say hello to Melissa. Hello, Melissa. How are you going?
Hello. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on your podcast today. I'm here in the southwest of England. It's slightly overcast, and this is a really nice thing to be doing in the morning. Really nice way of waking up, kind of. Yeah.
Thank you.
I know it's not more for you.
Not quite. It's evening here in Melbourne, Australia, and the weather's basically the same. So just a time difference.
I've always thought that the weather is kind of similar, Melbourne to to London, I suppose. I always felt like the weather was more or less, can be rainy, can be, yeah, is that sort of, yeah.
Yeah, it can be very European. Yeah, you do get your sort of autumns and winters where it's cold and things like
Right.
that. So it's probably very similar to like Europe weather in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Now we got the weather out of the way with, let's talk about music, shall we? That's what we're
Oh,
here for. Now,
absolutely.
Melissa is an amazing singer. And we will go into that a little bit more. But I wanted to have her on my show because we were just vibing when we had a little bit of a chat before I invited her on the show. And I just feel there's a lot of sort of similarities and synchronicities going on. And I just thought, let's hop on a call, let's talk about it, because we both believe in the power of music. It has great healing power, and I'm sure Melissa will share more around how she sees how you or we can all use that a little bit more in our daily life. Before we go into that, though, I would love to hear a little bit about your sort of music story. What how's that all came together, that you're now a singer and have albums under your belt and doing all this amazing stuff. How did you came to this point in time?
Well, thank you again, Birgit. So, I mean, the short answer, I'll try and keep it short.
Okay.
That essentially I've always sung, it's in me. But I was a silenced child in the sense that I grew up with parents who were immigrants from the Caribbean. And so, they knew hardship. They knew hardship both in the Caribbean, and they definitely knew hardship when they moved here to the UK. And so their aspiration for me was that I should have a proper job that has, a good pension, good
Okay.
holiday, all of that stuff. And so when I first kind of touted the idea as a young child of maybe 8 or so, that I wanted to be a singer. And at that stage, you don't really know even what that means, other than the fact that you open your mouth and you sing. You don't know anything in relation to what the life of a singer, somebody who sings as a profession, might be. But that idea was immediately flattened. And so I took that on board, and singing then became this secret thing that I did in the house when I was by myself. And I had an interest also there was clearly, when I look back, there was clearly, I guess, a need to try to be seen in some way, because at home I was smaller. So therefore it was like, okay, well, if I can't sing, then maybe I can be a presenter on TV. So I then started to work towards this idea of becoming a media broadcaster, which, for my mum, she understood better because, the BBC especially is like this institution, and you can see there are broadcasters
Mhm.
presenting on television and doing the news. And so that was like, okay, we'll go with that if that's where you want to be. So I therefore sort of took that more obvious path for a time. That was where I was heading. But then the singing and the music was just like the secret desire, this desire to perform, to act, to do all of that stuff, just stayed small and hidden within me. I studied media studies when I left school, and went on to study it further at university. Came out of university, or I should say, while I was at university, this is the important thing. I connected with people who were studying media studies, but also studying music with their media studies. And so that kind of was good because I was connecting with people who were studying media studies, but I was also connecting with people who had this love of
Mhm.
music, fueled my own love of music as well. So it was at university really that I started performing more,
Mm.
even though that wasn't the aim. I studied at Sussex in the southeast, more so of England, and there was a wonderful bar on campus that I would go to each week. And I remember the first time I really carefully and quietly, got up on stage and sang Sam Cooke's uh, "What a Wonderful World." You know that song? Don't know
Mhm.
much about history. That one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Who doesn't know that song?
It's such a great song. But for me, that was such a big moment, and yeah, it was an awful moment as well because I went away thinking, oh my gosh, that was just terrible. But I continued to go back each week, and when I left university, I got a job straight away working in magazines. But I was continuing to go to the late night jazz club after work, to join the open mic night where I could be part of the jazz vocal jam and sing songs. So that became, again, it was always like the secret thing. And then eventually I started doing a bit more. I so even while I was working in television, I was doing maybe weddings or little gigs in bars, little
Mhm.
jazz gigs and things. But it was never, yeah, it was, how do I say? I mean, I guess it was like my little playful moment. It was never that thing that I considered I would do
Mm.
seriously. Um, but eventually uh, I met someone who I had a relationship with, and he needed to move to Paris to work. He was offered a job in Paris. So it was while we were in Paris that I thought, well, I don't have anything else to do here. I might as well, Paris is the place of music. I might as well try and do more music. And so that's where I began to do it more essentially. And when
Wow.
you're out of the country, it sort of feels like it's okay to do something different.
Yes.
You're not
Yes.
around your family who are going to
No.
see what you're doing as much.
Yes.
It feels like you can explore a little bit more. So that was where I really started to do it a bit
Mhm.
more. Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate. That's what I did when I came to London. From Switzerland, I spent nearly a year in London on my own, and it was
Oh,
like
did you?
a rite of passage and awakening of, so many things.
Yeah.
So even though mine wasn't like singing, but yeah, the music and everything was involved because London's just it's just music is like so interconnected with London itself. So
Yeah.
you can't not have that in your life. So
It's a
Paris,
vibrant in London. Yeah, absolutely.
very, very love it. Mm.
Yeah. So yeah, so that was it.
Wow. So that's like Paris literally kind of sparked that whole this is literally what I'm gonna go for now. Wow.
I mean, even then, I have to say that it wasn't quite that, it took me a really long time, Bridget, before I was really comfortable saying that. Even when I
Mm.
was performing more in Paris, it was still like, oh, well, I'm doing it because I'm in Paris and, I'm not at home and I can't do anything else. So I might as well just do some music because, I'm here in Paris and I'm not working in any other way. So it was still, even for the time that I was in Paris, it was never like, I'm a singer. It was just kind of, I'm a singer because I'm here in Paris,
Mm. So
And then
when did that moment come where you actually said, "Okay, now I am actually singing. I'm gonna step into that
I mean,
role or
I
whatever."
can I really, I think only sort of when I released my first album 12 years ago.
Okay.
And even then, it was still kind of hard to say. It has been a very long path of acceptance that,
Mm.
um, one, am I even good enough to do this? Should I do it? Is it a good enough path for me?
Mm.
Um, feeling like a fake. I shouldn't be doing this anyway. And then owning that. And it really has been um, a, a long path of should I, shouldn't I, going for it, then not. I mean, I can tell you when I was working at the BBC, so this was before going to Paris. Um, no, sorry, after I got back from Paris. So after I got back from Paris, and my partner at the time, um, gosh, now I am getting confused. Sorry, it was before we went to Paris. So I just met him. He lived in the southwest of London, and he lived near to a really great, quite a historic music pub, which is still there in a place
Mm.
called Putney in southwest London, called the Half Moon. If anybody might know it, it's had all sorts of people like the Rolling Stones would have played their early gigs there, and lots of other really well known
Mhm.
artists and bands. And he lived near to this pub, and I saw that every Sunday they had a jazz jam, and so I thought, well, maybe I can go and ask them if I can sit in on their jam one Sunday. At this point, I hadn't been singing for a year because I was working at the BBC, and I'd had a kind of awful negative experience that made me feel I shouldn't sing because I can't work with all these other really brilliant musicians. So I'm just not going to sing. So it had been a year since I'd sung, as in performed or really sung anything. And then going to this pub this Sunday for the first time in a year.
Mhm.
And I remember what I sang, God Bless the Child, because that was like my signature tune when I had been singing a beautiful jazz standard that Billie Holiday made very
Mhm.
famous. And and I just remember singing that song and my voice rising out of me in a way that it basically screamed at me, you cannot stop singing. And it really shocked me, I think it shocked everybody in the room because they were like, who is this person with this voice? But it most of all, it shocked me because I was like, where did that come from? And that was a moment of like, oh my gosh, I can't stop singing. I understood that message
Uh-huh.
at that point. But
Wow.
even then, I was still like, oh, what should I sing?
Oh,
I,
no.
so
Oh.
it really has been a long path,
Mm.
and I started to own it a lot more when I recorded my first record.
Mhm.
But it's been a constant toing and froing and toing and froing. And
Mm.
now I call myself an artist. I know it's what I have to do. It's the path that's chosen for me,
Mhm.
and this is where I need to be. But it's not easy being an artist, is it? So so it
I
has been.
don't think so. I'm not one, so I can't say it is, but, if you listen to or, if I chat to some artists like yourself, and I've had, other, artists on the show as well, and yeah, I think it does sound like these days it's not easy, not just from, like, getting the I wouldn't say attention, but getting your music heard, but I think the internal struggle, like you just explained, of owning
It's the
it and
external
stepping
struggle.
into
Yeah.
that.
I think that's the main thing because I look at some and everybody will have a struggle in some way.
Mm,
But I look at younger artists and, you know, who are much more, if they've come from a background where they've been supported and they feel like they can just express themselves.
mhm,
No, and obviously they're in a time, they're of a generation where they probably latch much more easily onto some of the technologies that you can use to help to create
mm,
music, put your music out. But they just breathe their expression so easily.
mm,
Whereas if you have come from a background where you just felt like you can't express so easily, then
mm,
that's the thing that you're fighting against all the time. That
mm.
is the main thing.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, yeah, that's the thing that you've got to overcome. It's like your own
Mm,
view of yourself, and
mm.
that view of yourself comes from your upbringing, you know,
Yes.
that sense that you shouldn't be doing this. You need to do a proper job.
Yeah, a
And
proper job, right?
yeah, and when that's so firmly embedded,
Yeah,
it can be hard to fight against that.
it
Um,
is.
but I'm doing it, you know, but
And
I'm doing it.
I mean, I think you're doing it very well. I mean, if anyone goes and checks out Melissa's songs, even just one or two, you will realize that her voice is really amazing. So I just say to you off record that I've listened to one of your songs and it reminded me of someone else. Shall I say who it is?
I mean, you can, but yeah, I mean, I take it as such high
Mm,
praise, but you know, I mean, yeah, she is incredible.
yeah, I was mentioning Chaka Khan, and anyone who knows Chaka Khan knows she's got an incredible voice. And I love her. And just that song reminded me of one of yours. So
Thank you.
anyone who's listening, just let us know if you agree with my judgment. So we can feed that back to Melissa. Now, obviously, you got like music going through you 24/7. There will be a lot of people who think that that's not their path, and that's totally fine, but they love music and they might think, okay, well, I'd love to do a bit more with music or have more music in my life, and I'm kind of sick and tired of just listening. I know you've got something going on and off that you kind of involve the audience in, and I think that's really, really great. So if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit what that is and maybe other sort of projects you might have thought about doing, just so people get a bit of an idea what's out there potentially for them to be a bit more involved in music than just popping your headphones in and walking down the street or going for a jog.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, the first thing to say is like we live and breathe music through sound all the time because you know you walk outside, you're hearing, or even inside, you're hearing birds,
Mm,
the trees rustling as a sound, the water moving, the wind blowing, like there's sound which can be a soundscape and a musical creation in in many ways. And you know, so we've got it around us all the time. We just have to open up ourselves to it. But
yes.
in terms of creating music, I mean, I always encourage people, if you want to sing, then sing.
Mm.
Um, but you know, I remember, is it Keris Matthews? I think it was Keris Matthews who I heard once, who was just like, anyone can make a sound. Like you only have to hit something. That's a
Mm.
sound. You know, like in the most basic form, you know, our ancestors who wouldn't have had all these um, fancily constructed instruments would have just pounded whatever they had to make sound. And that's, you know, the creation of the sound of the earth. And that runs through us, you know, and can really connect us
Mhm.
with the earth. So anybody can do that. Hitting pans, you know, I've heard of drummers starting drumming because they were constantly just hitting pans, saucepans, and banging on the table, you know. Shakers, you know, just if you want to make a sound with putting some rice or some grains into a bottle
Mhm.
and shaking that. I mean,
Shake it.
exactly. You know, so we sometimes get a bit too caught up with the idea of being a musician, you know, as in a trained sense. And
Mhm.
actually, sound, making sound, creating music, creating art is our birthright. And it is an important part of forming who we are, connecting with other people, connecting with humanity and with all other living beings. You know, we all just, you know, have sound reverberating through us. If you just listen to the pumping of your heart, you know,
Yep.
that
Yep.
sound, all sound. So just if you want to create sound, just create. Just, you know, just do anything to make that sound, to create music. And
Yeah.
don't feel like it's for a privileged few who have some special skills to be able to do
Mm.
it.
Oh.
Having said that, if you want to build up the skill, you
Mhm.
know, or if you just want to do it for the pure joy of it, then do that. And so through you mentioned Live Again. I'd written Live Again. Initially, when I wrote it, I was going through a complex situation with somebody who I knew very well who was struggling mentally. And so that song was an expression of what I was experiencing in witnessing her pain and the pain it
Mm.
was for me witnessing her pain.
Mhm.
Um, I wrote that song and thought nothing of it. And then a couple of years later, when I wanted to record another record, I recorded Live Again. And this album is called Stripped Back. It was just my voice with my pianist and my voice with my guitarist recording a few songs.
Mhm.
Um, and I thought nothing about recording Live Again, really. But when I recorded it and I listened to the playbacks, I realized how much of my own plight, if you like, or struggle or challenges, my own complexities were being spoken about in this song through telling the story of what I thought was that of somebody else, you know.
Mm.
Um, and that led me, I was running a singing group at the time, and I was launching that record. And I asked the people in my singing group, do you want to join me to sing backing vocals on Live Again at the launch party? We'd never done a performance before, so they were very excited about that prospect.
Yeah.
They sang with me at the launch party, and as soon as I sang that song with them, I had visions of singing this song with other members of the public, connecting people who had an understanding of mental ill health. And so that
Wow.
was November 2015, and in February 2016, the first big sing took place at Cafe Nero. I think you have Cafe Nero in Australia, do you? No?
Yes, I believe we do. Yeah. I
Yeah, they're worldwide.
think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so that first big thing happened at Cafe Nero in Heathrow. And from that, this small idea that I'd seemingly had, I could tell was something more than that, because people who'd come made their way to Cafe Nero Heathrow, which is not the easiest place to get to, you know, if you're traveling, you do it because, okay, at least I'm going to get on a plane and fly off somewhere. But it's not the easiest place to get to, and not somewhere that you would want necessarily to get to if you're not traveling somewhere.
Mhm. Yeah.
People came, you know, they made an effort to
Wow.
be there on a cold, wintry Saturday morning in February. And I was panicking, thinking, who's going to show up to this? But around 30 people came, and they expressed how they'd come because they have lost somebody to suicide, or they've got their own struggles with mental health, or you know, and that made me realize that there was something more to this,
Oh.
you know, that was encouraging people to want to be
Mm.
there, because
Wow.
they connected with the message of the song, and they
Mm.
were wanting to connect with the message of the project.
Mhm.
Although it wasn't a project at that stage, I was just like, we're just getting together and having
Yeah.
a sit together.
Oh.
Then it led to doing a further recording with other members of the public at a recording studio in the summer of 2016. And, you know, and then from there, it's just kind of taken on
Wow.
its own life. And there were other big sing performances. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, just, yeah, it
Wow.
became, it became more than I anticipated.
That's
Um,
incredible. I've got goosebumps several times when you were just sort of explained the history of how you know. And I mean, mental health is it's I think it's a bigger topic than it has been ever. But it's
Yeah.
still not, I don't know. To me, it just feels like there's still not enough done to kind of address it. Yes, you can go
Mm.
to doctor, pop some pills, but that's really not gonna do anything. My personal opinion, really. Sometimes you need it. I'm not a medical professional, but I do feel that there's so many other things we can do to support ourselves, and music is definitely one of them. And when you
Definitely.
just said about your song, what you did, I mean, dude, I find that so beautiful that people singing together helps them heal from either their own mental health or what they've seen someone else they care about go through.
Mhm.
That just, I cannot explain to you how many goosebumps I'm having on my body at the moment. I just wish there would be more things like that that are taken seriously by like more and more people. And that's why hats off to you for doing this. And I hope you continue because I think it's really important that, someone like yourself does that.
Oh,
So
thank you. I
yeah.
mean, it's kind of become the thing that, like, wherever I can,
Mm,
I try to, because I think one of the best things is for people to have the opportunity to shine. Like, that's a quote on a biog that I send out sometimes to people, is that everyone deserves to have the opportunity to shine. And so there's a festival here called Cambridge Folk Festival. It's quite a
mhm,
large festival, and I took the idea to them in 2019 that I've got this project, and my idea is that I run a singing workshop each day, teaching people the parts to the song.
mhm,
And then they join me on stage and we sing that song together. And they ran with the idea
mhm.
and we did it, and people came to the workshop. I Because you never know when you're doing something like this, is somebody going are people going to show up? I mean, we're at a
Mhm,
festival, there's lots of other things they could be doing at the festival, other people they could be listening to, will they come?
mhm.
But people came, and what was nice was people came back the next day and then the next day, and there were
Really?
forming, yeah, connections
Wow.
forming with people. And so in the end, on the day that we did the performance, so I performed on the main stage of the festival. I performed my set, and then at the end, the people who'd been participating in this workshop um, came up through the audience and came onto stage and sang Live Again with me, and one other song that I taught them as well. And at the end of it, like, Cambridge is a festival where, there are festivals sometimes where people just, that becomes their festival. They go every year
Mhm,
without fail. And so there were people who came to speak to me afterwards who are like, I've been coming to Cambridge for 20 odd years, and I've always looked at that stage and thought, I'd love to be on that stage. And you gave me the opportunity to do it. So it was so beautiful. It was so powerful because, I mean, there's one thing to having a choir, and I've done this, you have a choir or a singing group where people are singing with you every week, and then you have a showcase where you invite friends and family to come and watch, and that's
mhm,
great. But it's a very different thing when you're performing with professional musicians. I'm performing with you too as a professional artist, because then you feel like, oh, that's such an uplift. It's not
yeah,
just you as kind of amateur, in inverted commas, singing together. We're singing as part of a professional performance with professional musicians in front of an audience of ticket buyers. These people have paid to be here. And so we're not just singing in front of friends and family, we're singing in front of an audience that has got their ticket to come to this festival. That's really empowering, you know.
mm,
So,
it is.
um, so I try to do more of that where I can.
Yeah. Oh,
Mm,
amazing. I love that. I mean, not only is it kind of a sort of a moment in life they won't forget, but I think it must be very cathartic as well just to do that and realizing their own power they have, not just from a
mm,
voice perspective, but it's probably pushing like limiting beliefs like I can't be on
absolutely.
stage where you can, or you maybe never thought
Yeah,
They're probably taking that and hopefully using that in other areas now of their life, saying, "I did
absolutely.
this, and I'm gonna do that now." So that's
Yeah.
just
Well, the voice is so important. You know, if you're told in any way or made to feel like you should not be expressing,
mm,
then that is going to impact every area of your life. So, people who've come to my workshops have been people in their 50s, 60s who have said, I was told in school as a child that I should not sing. I was told I should mime. And so that stays with them. You live with that message. And it's only when we awaken and think, oh my gosh, I'm 60 something and I was told at the age of 10 that I should mime. And I've let that message rule my life so that I don't speak, or I speak with a really small voice, or I don't sing. Or when I do speak, I speak in a way that I'm restricting my voice. Um, it really impacts you. I was doing one-to-one sessions with somebody not that long ago, a man who in his work does a lot of public speaking, but when he spoke with a very restricted, you could hear where his voice is, like you can hear him,
mhm,
but and not everybody will be able to identify this, but as somebody who works with people um, who sing or who do public speaking, you can hear where they're holding themselves back.
mm,
And so it was really difficult for him to speak. And we did a lot of work together where he just began to identify how he could release that restriction. But it's a long process, you know.
mhm,
As was the same for me. I was told,
yeah,
you know, that you've got to stay small and not express and be seen and not heard. And so that message, even though I had this voice inside me that wanted to sing, was that I shouldn't. And
mm,
it really does take some time and effort and a lot of work to undo and
yeah,
unwrap all of that. So I've had people in my singing workshops crying because they're like, "My
mm,
gosh, I'm singing
yeah.
and I'm years old and I was told I never should."
You know, I find it interesting because the voice itself, even if you don't sing, if you just speak and talk, there is so much oppression around that.
Mm,
And it, like you said, for many of us, myself included, it takes such a long time to realize that we do have something to say. It's actually something valuable, and our voice isn't that bad.
mm,
So if you have something where you can just go for like fun and
mm,
do the singing, I think that like I said before, it can be like an avalanche. It can trigger so much, and
absolutely.
in a world where it's so noisy at the moment and has
Mhm.
been for a long time, I think our inner voice can sometimes disappear. And I do feel
Absolutely.
with what you do, or anything along those lines, that's where I think music is such a beautiful thing. It can really get out of you who you truly are and
Absolutely.
help you forget those voices or gremlins, as I call them, that sit on your shoulder saying, "No, don't do it. You're not
Yes.
good enough."
Don't do this. You can't. You're not good enough. You're not worthy. Who are you to sing? Who are
Yep,
you to make a sound? You need to just be small,
yep,
stay quiet, all of that stuff.
yep.
Absolutely. And, you know, I would say, I mean, I mentioned birds singing and water. And
Mhm,
before we sat to have this conversation, as I said, I'm in Bournemouth at the moment in southwest of England. And when I'm at home in the morning, I love to be able to get out and just, if I can, go and have a walk around green. And that connection is so important because it's hearing those sounds. As soon as I hear water, everything kind of begins to relax inside of me. Hearing the birds, connecting with the trees, the earth, the grass, you know, everything. Those sounds, and also just being in the presence of all those energetic forces, beings,
mm,
is really important for me to start to connect and to silence the noise, take some time for myself where I hear that inner calling, which eventually is what did lead me to just be strong in saying, this is my calling. I hear it
mm,
inside of me. I've got to sing.
mm.
Um, And but you have to give yourself the time to do that, because we can block it out. We've got lots of things that we can use as distractions. We've got our phones now, and our
Yeah.
phones are so much, aren't they? You know, there's
Yeah.
always a notification, there's always an email message, there's always a
Mm.
social media post, there's always something else that we could be doing
Mm.
to stop the silence. And silence can be uncomfortable. I mean, it's beautiful, but when we're really silent, then we hear and we feel the inner workings that need those inner cries that are being quietened and pushed down. And
Mm.
they might be uncomfortable. They might be trying to get us to hear or to see or to notice something that
Mm.
perhaps we don't want to hear, see, or notice, because we know that it means a rupture, a life change,
Mm.
you know, something that needs to be recognized that we're trying to avoid. Um,
Ah,
but I've
yeah.
learned to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. I mean, it's not
Mm.
always easy.
Mm.
And sometimes I don't want to, but I make it part of my practice to
Mhm.
get comfortable with the uncomfortable. So I create spaces as much as I can for myself so that I can hear those inner callings
Yeah.
inside of me. Part of hearing those inner callings is connecting with
Yeah.
nature. So I spend that time with nature so that
Yeah.
I can get better at attuning myself to the frequency of nature.
Mm.
I can also hear what needs to
Yeah.
be heard with me. Um, but you have to create that space. You
Yes.
have to create that
Oh,
space. And if you
yes.
create that space, then you might be hearing something in you that says, I just need to put more joy in my life, and maybe
Mhm.
sing the way that I do that. I'm going to find myself a group and go to that
Mhm.
group. And I don't care that I've got this old message in me that told me that I shouldn't sing and that I shouldn't be heard and that I'm out
Yes.
of tune and all of those things that often just aren't true anyway. And by the way, even if you do think you're out of tune, and maybe you do have difficulty hearing, because that's a practice. If we become out of tune and out of frequency with our authenticity, then it will affect our ability to be able to hear a
Mhm.
melody, to reflect that in the way that we sing. I had a man who came to my group regularly each week, who to begin with did find it very difficult to hear the note and to reflect it.
Mhm.
And suddenly I noticed a couple of years down the line, and I was like, Marcus, oh my gosh, your voice, it's changed. He
Mhm.
was hearing the note, because when you sing with others,
Mhm.
you attune to the frequency of
Mm.
somebody else that you're singing with. So don't ever let it put you off. Don't ever feel that you shouldn't sing. Don't ever silence
Mhm.
yourself, your expression. Go and do exactly those things that you were told you should not be doing. Because if they're calling you, then that's exactly what you need to do.
Oh my God. You know, I was just thinking, I want to ask you, like, because we're going to slowly close off our chat, which I honestly, I could chat with you for another hour about it. I know we could, but there's so much to digest already in this conversation, and I don't really want to overwhelm anyone. And I want them to go away and sit with it in silence, hopefully. Um, I was just about to ask you, like, what kind of final words have you got? But honestly, I think what you just said before, I think it just hits. It hits the spot. I don't think there needs to be anything else said unless, something comes up for you right now, but
Well, somebody might be wondering, how do I start? And
good
during
question.
lockdown, we were all locked down. And so I was doing singing workshops online,
Mm.
just to bring people together online to sing.
Mhm.
And I was one of the first people to go, how is this going to work if we're singing via Zoom? I mean, that's not going to work. One of the powers of group singing with other people
Yeah.
is that you can hear them directly next to you, you can feel their energy. And
Mhm.
that's such an important, powerful thing.
Mhm.
But energy is energy, and that transports itself wherever, and it doesn't matter if you've got a screen or not. So yes, there is real power to singing with other people in the same room, but you can still have a powerful experience and a transformative experience singing online. You really can. It's just a different way. And
Awesome.
so, oh, totally. So I do these sessions online, and there were people who would join these sessions, and they lived not far from here, actually. I remember one woman in particular lived in Dorset, and she said, I don't know what to do when I'm not singing with you. What do I do as a way to keep myself singing? And I said to her, you're in Dorset, you're near the coast. Go and stand by the sea. But it doesn't have to be the sea. It might be a river, it might be a lake, it might be a tree, it might be just a little patch of green
Mhm.
that you have outside of your house or your flat or
Mhm.
wherever you live. Whatever nature you have around it, use it, even if it's a plant in your room, and
And sing
just
to it?
be with it. Yeah, be with
Okay.
it, and start with 5 minutes, two
Uh-huh.
minutes of just being with it. Just close your eyes, or if you don't want to close your eyes, if that feels too daunting, keep your eyes open, but find a fixed place in front of you, just looking at something that's not going to distract you. Look at the floor or a plain, even surface, and just, put your hand to your heart and just breathe for a moment. Just breathe, take 3 breaths, just in and out through your nose if you can, or however you can. And then if you can go that step further, just make a small sound, just the sound of just doing that. And just that is and feel what comes up for you as you do that. I can feel
Uh-huh.
like tingles, I can feel like my head begin to buzz, or even humming, just
Mhm.
And if you can do that repetitively, maybe for 2 or 3 minutes, and you can
Mhm.
stretch time each time, and I guarantee you will notice things moving around you. It's just that beginning of forming a connection, both with your own
Mm.
voice, your
Mhm.
own child that maybe has been silenced in some way and is trying to speak to you. And it's the beginning of your relationship and your connection with that plant, with that
Mhm.
water, sea, with the lake, with the river, with the tree, with the sky, with whatever. And it's such an important beginning to the journey of understanding
Mm.
yourself better and your presence in this world and your purpose and why you're here
Yeah.
and what do you have, because we all have one.
Yeah.
We all have expression that needs to come out, and your expression might be through more singing in a group with other people,
Yeah.
but your expression might also be, oh my gosh, there's this book in me that I want to write, or
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
whatever it is,
Whatever
you
it
know?
is, it will come out, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Melissa, it's time for us to wrap up. Unfortunately, I would have loved to hear a lot more, but I think you've given
Been lovely.
us so much to think about and some great tips to start as well. So if anyone does this, please get in touch with us or, let us know how you go and what your experience was because
Oh, I'd
we're both
love
very
to hear.
curious people, aren't we? So
Absolutely.
yes. If you want to check out Melissa and her music, all the details are in the episode description. But other than that, oh, I think we're going to leave it here. I truly feel it's a great moment to stop and let the others who were with us today just digest and hopefully gets the courage to just do the whatever it is for 2 minutes every day.
Just humming. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Melissa. I'm very grateful you came on today and shared what you
Oh,
did.
thank
It was
you. Thank
magical.
you so much, too. Thank you.
And to you, B-siders, thanks for tuning in. And I'll be back in your part of the world again very soon with another episode. Until then, take care, everybody, and I'll see you soon.